All right, there we just heard that the cryo-helium load has begun. Again, that is going into those pressure vessels that I mentioned earlier. Now, the crew training simulator has included playback of the sounds that were recorded in a previous Dragon capsule during recent flights. So all of the pops and the hisses that the vehicle puts out, all the crew has heard those before, though not live. So they are prepared for all the noises, the extra noises that they're now hearing. As for the range, continues to report no problems. They are go to support launch. Weather also clearly looking great. I think we're actually seeing even fewer clouds than we were about 20 minutes ago. We had a less than 10% chance or probability of violation of our weather constraints, also known as a POV. So that's really good. That is for the launch site conditions. We are also tracking downrange weather conditions as well as launch sites around the world in the unlikely event that Dragon needs to escape. Now, as a reminder, today we have an instantaneous launch time because we're heading to the International Space Station. So at this point in time, if we hear a hold for any reason, we will have to stand down and target our backup launch opportunity, which is tomorrow, just under 24 hours from today's planned launch. At this point in time, at just under T-minus 30 minutes till launch, let's turn it back over to Jesse and Sandra for an overview of what's to come until liftoff.
Great, thanks Kate. Always great to hear that we've got good weather and it looks beautiful over there at KSC. For Crew-5, the astronauts' flight to station will take about 29 hours.
And as we await T0 in just about 28 minutes from now, the ground operations team is doing a series of system checks to make sure both Dragon and Falcon 9 are ready for launch. You're looking at a live view of our teams at the Cape as they prepare for liftoff. And as we wait for the launch clock to hit 0, we want to give you an overview of what the Ascent portion of the mission will look like.
Now, once we hit T0 and a successful launch occurs, we will watch Falcon 9 and Dragon lift off from historic launch pad 39A and make their ascent.
About 50 seconds into flight, Falcon's 9 engines will throttle down to help pass through the period of maximum dynamic pressure on the rocket, or what we typically refer to as max Q. At this point in time, the vehicle will be going supersonic.
And once we're through the period of maximum dynamic pressure, we can throttle up our 9 Merlin engines again. From there, at about 2.5 minutes into flight, we have a series of 3 events that will happen in rapid succession.
The first is MECO, or main engine cutoff, and this is where all 9 Merlin 1D engines shut off in preparation for stage separation, which is, of course, our second event. This is where the first stage detaches from the second stage, and the first stage will make its way back to Earth for landing, while the second stage continues on its journey with the third event, which is SES-1, or second stage engine start number 1, and this is where the MVAC engine lights up and propels the second stage along with our Crew-5 astronauts to orbit.
As Stage 2 heads towards its targeted drop-off orbit, Stage 1 will execute 2 burns in order to make its way back down to Earth. The first is the entry burn, and that's where 3 of the 9 M1D engines will reignite and shut down, and this helps to slow the stage down in preparation for entry back into the Earth's atmosphere.
While the first stage is heading back to Earth, the second stage will cut off its 1 Merlin engine that was ignited right after stage separation. Once this happens, we will wait for confirmation of a good orbital insertion.
About 90 seconds after Dragon gets into orbit, Falcon 9 will land back on Earth. The landing burn is just a single engine burn, powerful enough to bring the vehicle's speed down rapidly in order to touch down on the drone ship at about 9.5 minutes into the mission.
While Falcon 9's first stage is landing, Dragon is preparing to separate from the second stage. About 3 minutes after the second stage gets into orbit, we should have a great view of Dragon with its 4-person crew drifting away from the second stage. Once Dragon is a short distance away, it will begin checking out its Draco maneuvering thrusters to make sure Dragon continues to increase separation distance from the second stage. And it is worth noting that these are not the Super Draco engines that would be used during an abort scenario.
About 40 seconds after separation, Dragon's nose cone deploy sequence will begin. It will take roughly 4 minutes for the nose cone hooks to unlatch and open, exposing its guidance navigation controls that will help Dragon autonomously fly to the space station.
And lastly, once the nose cone is deployed, the remaining Draco thrusters on the forward bulkhead will be checked. From there, over the next...
Stage 2 cryo-helium loading has started.
From there, over the next 29 hours, Dragon will be in its rendezvous and approach phases, undergoing a number of phasing burns as it makes its way back to station. All that will be coming up soon, but for now, let's check back in with Shaniqua in Mission Control Houston. Shaniqua?
Thanks, Sandra. The flight controllers here in Mission Control Houston are laser focused on the onboard systems of the space station, making sure it is ready to receive Dragon vehicle tomorrow. They're also making sure communication links between the station, Dragon, and the ground are working properly. The consensus right now is that everything is proceeding nominally. Teams here in Mission Control Houston, the teams in Hawthorne, and the astronauts aboard the space station will monitor the autonomous docking of the Dragon spacecraft tomorrow evening. They'll perform a series of leak checks, then work to open the hatches both on the Dragon side and inside the space station's pressurized mating adapter. We expect hatch opening to take place around an hour and a half after docking. And once aboard, the astronauts will be greeted by Station Commander Samantha Cristoforetti, and then the whole station crew will join in for welcoming remarks to the new crew members. Now, due to critical science, this welcoming remarks will be about 90 minutes after the crew is on board. Once on board, the crew members will no longer be referred to as Crew-5, but rather as flight engineers of the International Space Station. Here in Mission Control, Flight Director Greg Whitney is on console overseeing the team for launch, and he will be back tomorrow for docking. We'll be on air continuously through Crew-5's arrival, but live coverage of docking is expected tomorrow around 4:57 p.m. Eastern Time. That's it from now. From Mission Control Houston, I'll toss it back to the team in Florida. Daryl, how's it looking?
Well, it's wonderful out here, Shaniqua. Wish you could be here. We got picnic weather out here at the press site and Launch Complex 39, where we are looking out for the launch of Crew-5 from historic Launch Complex 39A, a beautiful sweeping shot of the lawn where we have our special guests. The media are here. We've got NASA social folks who are out on the lawn, and of course, me and Bob. Bob's riding shotgun here as we take our coverage to the next level at the final 23 minutes of liftoff. Now, from the countdown rather. We are just seconds away from the 5th astronaut rotation mission to the International Space Station under NASA's Commercial Crew Program. Commander Nicole Mann, pilot Josh Cassada, and mission specialist Koichi Wakata and Anna Kikina are strapped into their seats inside the Dragon Endurance at the very top of this rocket here. We are listening in to the communications as they talk live to the Falcon 9 team. The rocket is fueling. The operation is doing well. And the launch escape system is armed. Of course, that means Dragon is prepared to launch itself away from the Falcon 9 rocket in case of an emergency on the pad or after liftoff. So far, operations looking and sounding as expected. And we are counting down to our liftoff at just after noon, 12 p.m. and 57 seconds after the hour Eastern time. There was a 1-second adjustment. That's pretty typical as happens when we get to this stage of the mission. The mission is the continuation of rotational crew flights to the International Space Station from U.S. soil on private rockets and spacecraft. And of course, this would not have been possible without the success of the NASA SpaceX Demo 2 test flight now 2 years ago. And of course, the safe delivery and return of crews 1, 2, 3, and eventually here in about a week, Crew 4. Of course, we're happy to have the pilot from Demo 2, and that's Bob Binken. Appreciate you being here, been giving us some great thoughts and explanations about everything that's been happening.
Well, thank you, Daryl. I'm super excited to be here for Crew-5 and get a chance to relive my experience during the Demo 2 mission.
And it's been a great one so far. We've watched the crew get into the capsule. We've watched, they worked through a couple of issues early on, but those have been cleared. A suit leak check and a hatch leak check that had to be double checked. Now we're rolling along and moving towards liftoff. A couple things that are coming up as we count down. We're going to have stage 2 RP1 load complete. That's in 20 seconds. A few seconds later, we'll get strong back chill. That will begin in order to set the stage for the stage 2 liquid oxygen load. Of course, propellant's load is not an exact science, but once it completes, we'll hear that call out.
Stage 2 RP1 load is complete.
And there you heard it. Let's talk a little bit about the crew. If you're just joining us, we have a 4-person crew that we call Crew-5, and it's commanded by Nicole Mann. She holds a Master of Science in Mechanical Engineering and is a colonel in the Marine Corps. She was an FA-18 Hornet and Super Hornet test pilot and deployed twice aboard aircraft carriers in support of combat operations in Iraq and Afghanistan. Nicole was selected by NASA in June of 2013, and in the years that followed, led the astronaut corps in the development of hardware for our Artemis program. Today, the Crew-5 commander will be flying into space for the first time, and once she reaches space, she will be the first Native American woman to stay on station. A historic first for NASA and for her.
Absolutely, Daryl. The astronaut corps is widely diverse, and I'm just proud to see Nicole join that crew on board the International Space Station.
With her is pilot Josh Cassada. He grew up in Bear Lake, Minnesota. The physicist and U.S. Navy test pilot flew the P-3C and the P-8A, as well as 23 combat missions. He later became an instructor at the U.S. Naval Test Pilot School, which is a path to NASA for military officers. Cassada is one of more than 100 graduates who have become astronauts, going all the way back to the Mercury program. More recently, he served as capsule communicator and mission control, but today he is the pilot aboard Dragon.
It's a seat I know well, and I look forward to seeing Josh support Nicole and the rest of the crew on their way towards the International Space Station.
The mission specialist now, Koichi Wakata, he's the veteran, a Japanese astronaut who has a doctorate in aerospace engineering. In 1996, he became the first Japanese mission specialist aboard the Space Shuttle Endeavour for STS-72. Altogether, Koichi flew 4 Space Shuttle missions, a Roscosmos Soyuz, and was on a long-duration stay aboard the International Space Station. During his 2-decade career as an astronaut, Koichi has spent 11 months in space. Bob, you spent a fair amount of time in space yourself. It's great to have a veteran aboard.
It absolutely is, and in addition to being a veteran, Koichi just has a wonderful personality that I know is just it's key to kind of success on board the space station.
Our second mission specialist is Roscosmos cosmonaut Anna Kikina. She graduated from the Novosibirsk State Academy of Water Transport in 2006. In 2012, Anna officially became a candidate for the position of test cosmonaut. Crew-5 will be Anna's first flight into space, along with 2 of her other fellow astronauts. Now, each of these 4 crew members will be part of Expedition 68 once they arrive at the International Space Station. And there you see them there inside Crew Dragon Endurance, the second flight for this Dragon. I want to let you know, if you're here locally, you want to step outside and enjoy the launch, we've got a small radio. You can pick us up on VHF radio frequency 146.940 on the megahertz scale, and on UHF radio frequency 444.925 megahertz FM mode. You can hear that all within Brevard County, right here on the beautiful Space Coast. And you can see the...
Stage 2 LOX load has started.
Just got the call out that the Stage 2 LOX load has started, putting that liquid propellant into the second stage. Let's check back in with Kate Tice and get an update from Hawthorne. Kate.
Thanks, Daryl. We are T-minus 16 minutes away from launch, and everything continues to look great for Falcon 9 and Dragon. Falcon 9 began prop load at T-minus 35 minutes. The loading of RP1 fuel on the second stage is complete. That finished at T minus 20 minutes. Fuel loading continues on the first stage. It is almost complete. That should be wrapping up here momentarily. Densified liquid oxygen loading is underway on both the first and second stages. Those look to be about 80% on the first stage and has only just recently begun on the second stage. So not much there yet. That will wrap up at T minus 3 minutes and T minus 2 minutes respectively. Now, as for checkouts of thrust vector controllers, what we call TVC wiggles, those are coming up. We basically check to make sure that the thrust vector controllers are able to actuate the engines themselves. That's what helps create gimbal for those engines, and gimbaling is actually how Falcon 9 steers itself. So those are coming up along with throttle valve checkouts on the engines. The Dragon mission director and team are currently reporting no issues, so really good on that front. Communication checkouts are complete. The crew access arm is retracted, as we can see there, and the crew is strapped in and ready to go, as you can see there on the right-hand side of your screen. Everybody continuing to monitor prop load there on their crew monitors. Now, final instructions to the crew come at T minus 10 minutes. At that point, their crew displays will be configured for launch. This setup gives the crew insight into how the launch is proceeding and provides constant updates on vehicle health. At T minus 5 minutes, we'll hear the call out that will be in terminal count, and at that point, Dragon will transition to internal power. We'll hear continued call outs on the countdown nets as we get closer to liftoff. As for range, they continue to be go, continuing to monitor the launch corridor, and everything remains green. As for weather, we're looking at 7-mile-per-hour winds at the launch site. And as I said before, as the countdown continues, we are seeing fewer and fewer clouds. Just an absolutely stunning day there at Kennedy Space Center. Let's check back in with Daryl to see the last couple minutes prior to liftoff.
Thanks, Kate, and it really couldn't be more perfect out here weather-wise for a launch. How about that, Bob?
It just looks absolutely stunning to look out and see the vehicle ready to go, the crew on board, strapped in. I'm just super excited for them.
And there's a view of the countdown clock and the historic American flag that has been standing there since the space shuttle program. Now you're looking at a pic of Crew-5. Crew-5 flying aboard the Dragon capsule Endurance, and the booster that you see behind them that they're posing with is a brand new one. Actually was damaged in transit from California to Texas, but it was fixed, repaired. Crew did a great job, the SpaceX team, in getting it all ready. And at the time that Falcon 9 launches Dragon to space, the International Space Station will be 260 statute miles over Australia. Crew-5 will then spend the next 21 hours with Mission Control Team that you see there in Houston, standing by, getting ready for the beginning of this mission. They'll spend 29 hours rather, chasing down the International Space Station for a rendezvous at 4:57 p.m. Eastern Time tomorrow evening. One of the longer transits, Bob.
It's true. It's a little bit longer than usual, or average, I would say, as we work towards Crew-5. But as the launch dates shift around, that changes the time that you can actually arrive on space station. They've got plenty of consumables, so it should be fun to have some time in space.
And when they arrive tomorrow evening, we'll have live coverage on NASA TV of docking, as well as the Crew-5 welcome ceremony at 8:15 p.m. Eastern Time, 7:15 p.m. Central. And some final thoughts, Bob, as we get ready to watch Crew-5 launch into space.
You know, my opportunity to sit here and watch Crew-5 go has just been inspiring again to see another vehicle head towards the International Space Station. Again, I'm excited for them, and just hopeful that Nicole, Josh, Koichi, and Anna have just a wonderful mission. I know that they've got a wonderful launch in front of them.
Absolutely, and that's what we're rooting for here. And so with T-minus 11 minutes and counting, we're going to spin our chairs around and watch the launch, but we're going to let Kate and the team focus on the pad as we proceed through the final stretch of the countdown. We'll turn it over to Kate Tice at SpaceX headquarters in California to take us through. Take it away, Kate.
Thanks, Daryl. As you can probably tell by the background noise, the crowd is definitely growing here at SpaceX headquarters in Hawthorne, California. Certainly one of our company traditions is to watch the launch itself from behind Mission Control, which you see there on your screen. You can see this is Mission Control Hawthorne, or as you sometimes hear referred to as MCCX. And then, of course, a crowd of employees watching from behind. I personally also stand there if I'm not doing the webcast, so I can confirm it's a great spot to watch launch. Like I said, as you can see, the energy is certainly starting to grow now that we're about to hit T-minus 10 minutes. Beautiful view there of Falcon 9 and Dragon on the pad, ready to take Crew-5 to space.
We did discuss
Dragon, SpaceX, confirm crew displays are configured for launch.
Wilco, we would like to give a huge thanks to the NASA and SpaceX team, the thousands of people for their development, preparation, and training in getting Endurance and Crew-5 to the launch pad today, and your continued support in helping to make this a successful mission. We look forward to joining the rest of our Expedition 68 crew members aboard the International Space Station. And a special thanks on behalf of all the crew to our family and friends. It is your love and support that help make dreams come true. Now let's do this. Crew-5 displays are configured for launch.
Copy. And Nicole, Josh, Koichi, and Anna, on behalf of the entire team at SpaceX, good luck, Godspeed, and enjoy the ride.
And those words from Nicole Mann, the first female commander of a Dragon, as she thanked the many folks that have helped to get them to this point. We're now less than 9 minutes away from launch today. Upon liftoff, you'll hear a number and letter combinations which mark different abort zones throughout the flight, as well as some performance calls. The first two are 1A and 1B, and those signify the first stage and will last up to the very north tip of North Carolina. The next are 2A through 2E, and those will come into play once the second stage kicks in, lasting from the top of North Carolina all the way to the tip of Newfoundland in the northern Atlantic. You'll also hear a spot that is to be avoided, and you might hear Shannon or forward to Shannon, and that actually refers to Shannon, Ireland, meaning they would target off the east coast of Ireland if they were later in that second stage and did need to abort for some reason. So the next major milestone that we're looking towards will come just seconds from now, and that will be when engine chill begins on the first stage of the engine.
That's right. So engine chill is basically when we take a little bit of that super chilled, densified liquid oxygen and we flow it through the turbo pumps of the Merlin M1D engines on the first stage. This helps to prepare the turbo pumps and avoid any thermal shock to the hardware when they see the full flow of liquid oxygen during ignition. We're also expecting the conclusion of prop load for the RP1 on first stage to wrap up at T-minus 6 minutes. LOX load continues to be underway on both first and second stages, again wrapping those at T-minus 3 minutes and 2 minutes.
And after that, we'll hear a number of call-outs related to Dragon's flight computer. Some will be
Stage 1 engine chill has started.
And you did just hear that call out that stage 1 engine chill has begun. Coming up in just about 45 seconds, we should expect to hear that RP1 load is complete. RP1 load is that densified kerosene or rocket fuel that will help propel the crew into orbit. All of that RP1 is loaded into the first stage, and we are standing by to hear that it was loaded into the second stage as well.
Again, we expect that to wrap at T-minus 6 minutes. The venting that you see on screen is totally normal. That is just some of...
Stage 1, RP1 load is
Coming up, we'll also hear the call for Dragon to configure for terminal count, and then it will be transferred over to internal power, and then we'll hear that propellant tanks on Falcon 9 are getting ready to pressurize, which helps add some additional rigidity and structural support as we get ready for strong back retract.
That strong back will retract a couple of degrees at first, and then we will see it swing open completely just shortly, or at the moment of
Falcon 9
liftoff.
tanks will be pressurizing for strong back retract.
Right, and there's that indication that we are preparing for that strong back retraction.
Coming up in just a few seconds, we should hear that Dragon is in terminal count.
Dragon is in configure for terminal count.
All right, there we heard that call. Dragon onboard computers have now taken control of the vehicle. As I mentioned before, first stage LOX or liquid oxygen loading is underway and will wrap up at T-3 minutes. And the second stage will wrap its LOX load at T-2 minutes. Launch teams continue to report no issues and everything remains green and for an on-time launch.
Retract has started.
And here in just a couple seconds, you might be able to see the strong back arm as it does begin to retract. As Kate said, it will recline 2 degrees.
We can just barely make out that the clamp arms are now beginning to move. All right, now that those clamp arms are removed, as Sandra said, this will retract by 2 degrees. And then at liftoff, the strong back will retract another to 45 degrees, allowing Falcon 9 to clear. Strong back is part of the transporter erector, and the transporter erector is what provides the liquids, and the gases, and the electrical connections to the vehicle. It's also what we use to integrate the vehicle in its horizontal position, and we can see that 2-degree retraction just now complete.
And the next call out that we should hear in about 20 seconds is that the first stage LOX load is complete.
Stage 1 LOX load is complete.
And there we go, all of the oxidizer loaded on stage 1. Soon we'll hear that stage 2 LOX load is complete, and that will be the last propellant call out we'll hear today. Now less than 3 minutes until launch.
Dragon is in terminal count and is on internal power.
All right, there we heard the good news that Dragon is now on internal power. Again, the white clouds that you see there at the base of the Dragon trunk, totally normal. That's just the vapor from the liquid oxygen. Again, second stage now wrapping up its LOX load. Excuse me, first stage wrapping up its LOX load just a few minutes ago, and now moving toward wrap up of second stage LOX load, which will complete at T-2 minutes.
Coming up on 2 minutes until liftoff, standing by for word that stage 2 LOX load has been completed.
Dragon is in auto idle. Stage 2 LOX load is complete.
There we heard the call out. Falcon 9 is now completely fueled. All of its propellants, so
Gas closeouts are starting. Expect loud venting.
all of its propellants, and we can see that leftover liquid oxygen now being vented or released, now flowing further away from the vehicle. So nearly 1 million pounds of liquid oxygen in RP1 now on board Falcon 9. It is fully loaded and ready for launch.
And coming up at T-1 minute, we'll hear that Dragon is in countdown. Its flight computer will switch to countdown mode, and we'll hear that the flight termination system on Falcon 9 is armed.
STS is armed. Falcon 9 is in startup and is now controlling.
And there you heard it,
Dragon is in countdown.
Dragon's flight computer in countdown. The flight termination system now armed.
We should get the final go for launch from SpaceX launch director Mark Surtees.
Dragon, SpaceX, Godspeed, go for launch.
SpaceX Dragon, go for launch.
SpaceX
T-minus 30
reports go.
seconds.
Crew reports go. 30 seconds until liftoff.
T-minus 15. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition. Engines full power. And liftoff. Stage 1 propulsion is nominal.
Vehicle is pitching downrange. Stage 1 propulsion is nominal.
We're now at T plus 35 seconds into the 5th rotational crew mission on board Dragon and Falcon 9.
Coming up in just a few seconds, we'll hear the call out for stage 1 throttle down.
Stage 1 throttle down.
Falcon 9 engines throttling down to help pass through the period of maximum dynamic pressure.
This period is known as max Q, and once the vehicle, there we just heard that the vehicle is now traveling faster than the speed of sound. Once through max Q, we'll throttle those Merlin engines back up.
Max Q. Stage 1 throttle up. Stage 1 throttle.
Stage 1 Bravo.
Copy 1 Bravo.
That call out for 1 Bravo means we're in the second and final abort mode for the first stage, continuing to get good performance. The crew is already pulling over 2 Gs. And next up is going to be a couple of events in rapid succession. First will be engine chill on the second stage and back engine. And there you heard that call out. And then we'll have MECO, or main engine cutoff, where the 9 engines igniting will cut off in preparation for second stage separation. Then we'll see the single Merlin vacuum engine on the second stage ignite and continue to carry the Crew-5 astronauts to orbit.
Just like we did on first stage, that MVAC chill is intended to help pre-chill the hardware prior to the full flow of that densified liquid oxygen.
Stage 1 throttle down.
At this point in time, those 9 Merlin engines are beginning to throttle down in preparation for MECO, or main engine cutoff.
Standing by for MECO.
And MECO.
Stage 2 Alpha.
Stage separation confirmed. Copy 2 Alpha.
There we should see that second engine begin to ignite now. And obviously confirmed by the loud cheer behind us here at Mission Control Hawthorne.
And we're also in 2 Alpha for the aborts if needed. Again, second stage is lit and continuing to carry the Crew-5 astronauts into orbit.
We're now getting a view of the first stage after that stage separation. The second stage still being illuminated by that single Merlin vacuum engine, and that's on the right-hand side of your screen. First stage on the left-hand side of your screen making its way back to Earth. We will be attempting to land it on our drone ship, which today we are using Just Read the Instructions.
Acquisition signal, Bermuda.
And we did hear that acquisition of the ground station in Bermuda. The first stage is continuing to make its way back to Earth, and the second stage is going to continue.
SpaceX, trajectory nominal.
Another good call, trajectory nominal.
Dragon copy.
Confirmation there from Commander Nicole Mann. You can also sort of see the Space Coast there in the background of the first stage on the left-hand side of your screen. It also looks like you can actually see the thrust plume created by the first stage as it's now rotating just out of screen.
Second stage is going to continue firing until a little over 8 minutes into the flight, really doing the heavy lifting now, getting the crew into orbit.
Everything continues to look nominal on both first and second stages. As I mentioned before, the first stage will be making a landing on one of our drone ships, which is currently parked a couple hundred miles off the coast of Florida in the Atlantic Ocean. So we can see now that
Dragon, SpaceX, trajectory nominal.
Good confirmation there that we have good trajectory.
The second stage now traveling over 5,400 miles per hour. Crew is pulling a little more than 1G right now. That's going to continue to ramp up, peaking just before we get to second stage cutoff here in just a few minutes from now.
First stage will be performing 2 separate burns, a re-entry burn where we reignite 3 of the Merlin M1D engines on the first stage. We ignite the center engine into radial engines to help slow it down as it re-enters the Earth's atmosphere. And then the second final burn, and that will be the landing burn on our drone ship.
And the single MVAC engine that you see.
Trajectory nominal.
The single MVAC engine that you see on the right of your screen is continuing to fire. We did hear another call out that trajectory is nominal. Crew heading in the direction that they are supposed to be. This single engine can produce over 220,000 pounds of thrust in the vacuum of space. Now over 200 kilometers in altitude. We will start to hit events now in a rapid succession as the first stage continues to make its way back to Earth and the second stage continues its burn. Just a couple minutes left in that burn.
For those of you just joining us, just over 6.5 minutes ago, our 4 Crew-5 astronauts launched from Kennedy Space Center in Florida, and they are now making their way into orbit on the second stage inside Crew Dragon.
Trajectory nominal.
Which we're hearing that the trajectory on that is nominal.
Dragon copy.
They are safe inside Dragon Endurance, whereas the first stage on the left-hand side of your screen is making its way back to Earth. We are coming up to the re-entry burn, which, as I said before, we ignite 3 of the 9 Merlin engines to help slow the booster down as it re-enters the dense part of the Earth's atmosphere. As the entry burn completes, we'll be in the final...
Stage 1, entry burn startup.
So there we heard the call out. You can there see it on your screen that that entry burn has been initiated.
And as that entry burn completes, we'll be in the final different abort phases here shortly, which essentially correspond to areas along the very northeastern seaboard of the U.S.
Stage 1, entry burn shut down.
Great news, that entry burn was shut down, and then those last all the way across the Atlantic off the coast of Scotland for those abort zones.
Everything continues to look nominal for both the first and second stages.
Terminal guidance.
And the crew with the second stage still attached is now traveling over 13,000 miles per hour.
We're about 10 seconds away from SECO 1.
Copy, Shannon.
Shannon,
Stage 1, transonic.
That call out for Shannon, Ireland, indicative of our final abort zone. After this, we'll see second stage shut off, and we'll be listening for confirmation of a good orbit, which tells us the crew and Dragon are exactly where they need to be.
There we had confirmation that the
Stage
MVAC
1 landing burn.
has shut down simultaneously. The entry.
Dragon SpaceX, nominal orbit insertion.
And you heard that call for a good insertion. We will coast for a few minutes.
There we can see the drone ship coming into view as Falcon 9 attempts.
Stage 1 landing leg deploy.
You can see those landing legs have now deployed. And as you can see on your screen, and you can hear by the clapping and cheering behind me, Falcon 9 has landed on our drone ship just through the instructions, parked off the coast of Florida.
And again, that second stage separation will be coming up just a couple of minutes now. We do coast for a few minutes after second engine cutoff to allow any rates or motion to dampen out and settle. And looks like we're going to get a view of the second stage as it separates here shortly. We did hear that the crew has been successfully inserted into a good orbit. Again, the crew is still attached to the second stage.
We are expecting stage separation to occur in just over a minute from now, about 1 minute and 8 seconds. And that's when when the second stage will separate from the Dragon trunk. The Dragon trunk is the part of hardware where we are able to house the cargo that is able to be exposed to the vacuum of space, as well as the solar panels which help power Dragon while it is on orbit. Again, that stage separation is now coming up in about 30 seconds. After stage separation, we will have nose cone deployment. Now that Dragon is in the vacuum of space, we will be able to open the nose cone and expose that forward hatch, which is what is utilized to dock autonomously with the International Space Station.
And that nose cone does stay closed for the flight uphill to help protect all of the guidance, navigation, and control sensors. We are standing by for second stage separation. And there is separation.
Dragon separation confirmed. And Dragon, this is your launch director.
Dragon copies and
Dragon, this is your launch director on Dragon. On behalf of the entire launch and recovery team, it was an honor, a pleasure to be a part of this mission with you. And while October 3rd may belong to the Mean Girls, October 5th will forever belong to Crew-5. Godspeed, Endurance. Cheers.
awesome. Thank you so much to the Falcon team. Woo! That was a smooth ride uphill. You got 3 rookies that are pretty happy to be floating in space right now, and 1 veteran astronaut who's pretty happy to be back as well. Let's see what you got to say, Koichi.
Falcon team, it was a smooth ride, and I see all the 3 happy faces here back in 0G, and I appreciate all the help to give us a smooth ride and training, and thank you so much. JAXA の支援隊の皆さん、非常にスムーズな打ち上げでした。打ち上げご支援していただいた皆さん、応援に駆けつけてくださった皆さん、ありがとうございました。この調子でチームワークを持って頑張ります。Thank you for your support. Anya.
Thank you, Falcon 9 and our fellow agencies, to Roscosmos, NASA, and JAXA, and SpaceX exactly for giving us that opportunity. We're so glad to do it together. And thank you for everybody, for all people who with us. Спасибо большое всем агентствам, Роскосмос, НАСА, JAXA и, естественно, SpaceX за предоставленную нам возможность. Мы рады всем экипажам делать то, что мы сейчас делаем. И большое спасибо всем людям, кто сейчас с нами.
Some really nice words there from the Crew-5 crew, as well as...
And Dragon Falcon 9C, thanks for the words. Had a great ride. Have a good mission. We'll see you later.
A wonderful Mean Girls reference there by Launch Director Mark Soltis, and then we just heard from Chief Engineer Dan Alex. And we just heard our first Quindar tone, indicating the crew is in space.
Dehumidifier activation and service section Draco checkouts. Expected loss of signal, New Hampshire.
Dragon copy.
And Kate, it did look like we were getting our first views of that microgravity indicator.
I did see that as well.
And we're getting views now of the crew on orbit, 3 of them for the first time ever. We saw some cheers, some high fives. Looks like they're feeling great.
Hopefully we can see that zero-G indicator float back into view and hopefully get a better shot of it. I couldn't quite tell what it was, although it kind of looked like it may have been an Einstein doll. But that's just kind of what it looked like from the backside.
I think you're right, Kate. It looked like a baby Einstein to me. So the next milestone that we're looking ahead towards is the nose cone opening.
If you've just joined us, we had a successful liftoff exactly 16 minutes ago of the Crew-5 mission. They had an on-time liftoff from Kennedy Space Center at noon Eastern Time. They had a smooth ride up to orbit. The first stage landed successfully on our drone ship. Just read the instructions, and everything has been looking good so far. We are hoping to get another view on board Dragon once we're able to get that camera back. But so far, everything leading up to this point in time, we got a shot there of the MVAC engine, which is no longer firing. It is coasting with that attached to the second stage, which has been separated from Dragon. So everything was super smooth this morning, starting all the way back. I think we got here around T-4 hours, and super smooth countdown. Beautiful day from Kennedy Space Center. It looked like a gorgeous view from where Daryl and Bob were sitting. But yeah, we are standing by for the nose cone opening. Now that the Dragon spacecraft is in space, we are able to...
Expected loss of signal, New Finland.
We are able to open up that nose cone and expose the forward hatch, which is what is utilized to autonomously dock with the International Space Station, but of course to protect that hardware as well.
Signal,
As well as protect the guidance and navigation control hardware. We keep that nose cone closed during launch preparations and during the ascent portion. So as you can saw there momentarily, Dragon is in space, and the Crew-5 astronauts, all 4 of them are floating, or they will be able to float soon. We're hoping to get another view of that zero-G indicator once we're able to bring onboard cabin views back to you of the Crew-5 crew. We always like to see what the zero-G gravity indicator is. As you saw earlier in the webcast, Bob actually brought the zero-G indicator that he and Doug used on the Demo 2 mission, a lovely sequin dinosaur, which I also have one at my desk, not the Bob obviously has the one that went to space. Mine is a replica, but we love seeing these zero-G indicators. It's a really nice way to connect those of us on ground with the folks up in space. So as I said before, we are anticipating nose cone deployment shortly. I'm going to do a quick check-in, and there we can see now the nose cone, the hooks have been released, and we see that nose cone moving with a pretty up-close shot.
We're continuing to see that nose cone open, and
Acquisition of signal line.
as we've mentioned, this does uncover a number of critical systems for the flight up to the space station that will be required for docking. There are 6 hooks that hold the nose cone in place during the launch and ascent portions. Those have begun to retract, and the nose cone is beginning to swing open. The nose cone is about 2/3 of the way open at this time, so we do expect it to be fully open here shortly.
Shortly after nose cone deployment, the crew will be able to get their visors open, and they'll be given the okay to get out of their suits, and that will allow them to settle in for their ride to the International Space Station.
It is about a 29-hour journey for the crew from launch to docking to the space station, but as you said, they'll be able to get out of their suits, get comfortable, get some rest, and just enjoy being in the microgravity environment of space. Again, we have 3 first-time flyers and 1 veteran on today's flight, but I'm sure it was an exciting moment. No matter how many times you've been to space, I can't imagine that it ever gets old.
I would probably agree with that. I would also imagine that the 3 first-time space goers will have a brief period of acclimation to gravity. I know I certainly would, and I also recognize that my period probably wouldn't be very brief in order to get acclimated to that lack of gravity. But yeah, this is something that the veteran astronauts on board station are, always happy to help really introduce the new space goers to the new environment.
Absolutely, and we did also hear that there was good service section Draco checkouts that took place. We are standing by for that nose cone to be fully deployed, but it should be coming here momentarily.
Dragon, we see a nominal nose cone opening, TCS and forward bulkhead Draco checkouts.
Dragon copies.
Next burn is the upcoming phase burn per your displays.
We see the phase burn in 28 minutes.
Good readback.
So you heard it there, the nose cone has fully been opened successfully. We had some good checkouts on the Draco thrusters, on the service section Draco thrusters rather, and we also had nominal forward bulkhead checkouts.
That's right, and the astronauts should be getting the okay to doff or remove their suits in about 6 or 7 minutes. I would imagine that, as Sandra mentioned before, we do have 3 space newbies on board today. I would imagine that they would be pretty excited to get out of their seats. They've been in these seats for a while. The crew ingressed hours ago, and I would imagine that the 3 folks and even the veteran, everybody would be excited to get out and be able to float around a little bit for the first time on this Crew-5 mission.
Yes, absolutely. And you do see the crew working through some procedures there on the touchpads that they do have in front of them. They'll continue to have those available for them throughout their flight uphill. Again, this is going to be about a 29-hour launch to docking for Crew-5.
It seems as though that zero-G indicator may have floated out of view, perhaps up above the crew displays. We can see that the visors are up.
Dragon, SpaceX, environments are looking good for suit doffing. For today, we can leave the camera configured for a little while longer, but at this time, you are go for 4.012 and 4.300. As a reminder, please stow the suits with the visors closed. I'll copy.
Okay, Dragon copies. We are go for 4.012 and 4.300. We're going to keep the cameras configured, and when we stow the suits, we'll do it with the visors closed.
Good readback. At this time, you're also go to tell the world a little bit about that stowaway we saw shortly after second engine cutoff.
So we're standing by for a few words from the crew about that zero-G indicator. And there it is.
Expected launch. Dragon, I'm back in the ground. We missed the last part of your training.
And no worries, repeating my last one there. I was going to have you all talk a little bit about your zero-G indicator, but we can hold that off for the next ground station pass here for Dubai. At this time, what I'll do is I'll take the cameras external for suit doffing, and then you let me know when they're allowed to come back on board.
Okay, Dragon copies. So we'll let you know when you come back on with the cameras, and we're excited to talk about our stowaway here.
Okay, Dragon copies and working.
And it does sound like we are in a brief expected loss of signal with the crew. This does happen from time to time when we're in between our satellites, but we will have views and communication back with them here shortly, and we're looking forward to hearing their words on their stowaway and what that special meaning is for the crew. So with Crew-5 now successfully on orbit, let's head over to our counterparts at Kennedy Space Center in Florida. Daryl, it was spectacular to watch this launch from here in Hawthorne, but tell me, what was it like to see it on the ground?
It was amazing. First of all, we got an idyllic day right here on the Space Coast. I mean, the temperatures are like, mid 70s. There's a cool breeze. Phenomenal launch. Bob, I want to get your thoughts. You've flown, you've watched. This was pretty perfect.
No, this was just outstanding. It was picturesque, with the blue sky, the blue background, a beautiful day here in Florida. The only thing I wish was that I was there with them, because that is the one place that is better to watch a launch from than right here at the Kennedy Space Center is on board the rocket ship.
I got to believe that. And though we weren't on board, we did get to watch the views as we were going up and saw them land the booster, which, by the way, that booster also going to be SpaceX's and NASA's Crew-6 booster. So more the reuse, NASA taking advantage of that as well.
Absolutely. Every chance that we get to reuse a capsule or reuse a booster kind of drives down costs and increases the opportunity for more folks to fly in space.
Now I'm headed out to take a swim, right? I mean, this is just perfect out here. Bob, thank you for your thoughts. And now we're going to move on. We've got an interview here with Robin Gatens, the director of the International Space Station, who also joins us here. And you got to experience the launch from right here outside the press site. And I want to ask you, how did you enjoy it?
Well, it's always exciting to see launch to the International Space Station. I've seen many, but especially to see a new international crew headed to the International Space Station was very exciting. And of course, you nailed it. Beautiful day. Really glad we we got this one off today.
Absolutely, and they'll make that 29-hour transit to the space station. You're the director of the International Space Station, so I want to ask you, I heard there's a book coming out there have been books before about the International Space Station, but a new one's coming out. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's called Our Benefits to Humanity. It is a publication we have put out before, and we actually released it in July, so it's out. It's both in print format as well as online, so people can just search on Benefits for Humanity, International Space Station, and find that book. And it highlights all of the wonderful research that's going on the space station. This crew will be doing over 200 experiments during their time on the International Space Station, ranging from medical kinds of research that will help treat diseases and produce new drugs here on Earth, regenerative medicine. One day we might even print organs for transplant on Earth. We have Earth science going on Space Station, a number of climate instruments to help us understand Earth's climate. Really exciting results. This is truly what we call the decade of results on the International Space Station, where we're building on past lessons and capabilities to just compound the results that we're able to get out of the space station.
And 235 investigations, 76 new ones, and you mentioned the decade. 2 decades, more than 2 decades, the International Space Station has been operating. You mentioned some of the science that they're going to be doing. I'm wondering if you have a favorite that you've kind of identified, like, oh, I can't wait to find out the results of that.
Well, I've been tracking a lot of them. I'm really excited about some of the medical things. We're flying again a payload by a company called Lambda Vision, and they're producing retinal implants that could be used to help patients with ocular degeneration. So that's really exciting. I'm excited about what we're learning, with respect to the climate. We got brand new climate instruments up on board. We've got companies learning how to make better products through their research on through the ISS National Lab and their work on the space station. So I'm also excited about plant research going on Space Station. I think that's not only important for future exploration missions, but also to help us grow plants in harsh environments, small spaces here on Earth.
And also NASA, while doing all of that, is continuing to work towards its ultimate goal of getting to the moon, going back to the moon and sustaining our presence there. A lot of technology at the station that works towards that end. We want to actually pause, though, for 1 second, because we understand that one of the astronauts, Josh Cassada, has a statement that he is going to make. It is relatively about his zero-G indicator, which, if you saw in the coverage, it was I don't know if it was a baby Einstein, Bob, but it was a little Einstein.
It definitely looked like a small Einstein, but we'll listen to Josh and hear exactly the details.
Let's listen in. Again, waiting for astronaut Josh Cassada with a special message.
And Dragon, cameras are internal.
SpaceX. Dragon copies. We are internal. We see waistbands off and stand by for the cabin mic check.
You see Koichi Wakata is out of his seat.
Yeah, this
SpaceX Dragon from the cabin mic com check.
And Koichi, I've got you 5x5. How me?
Mike, we have you loud and clear also.
Great news, and we're also getting some great views inside the capsule here, so if you all want to get a chance to talk about your indicator, we'd all love to hear some.
Absolutely, Mike.
So, a couple years after he come up with his groundbreaking theory of special relativity, Albert Einstein, in his mind, still had a couple loose ends to tie up. While he was sitting in the patent office, because he wasn't famous yet, definitely should have been, he had what his happiest thought of his entire life. That thought was, a person in free fall doesn't feel their own weight. That thought, along with some others that he built upon, led to general relativity and our understanding of gravitation and curvature of space-time. We're experiencing Einstein's happiest thought continuously, like the International Space Station has been doing for over 20 years. On Crew-5, call this little guy our free fall indicator. We're here to tell you there's plenty of gravity up here. In fact, that's what's keeping us in orbit right now and preventing this trip on a Crew Dragon from being a one-way trip. A little bit like life. We live in the same world, we live in the same universe. Sometimes we experience it in a very different way from our neighbors. We can all keep that in mind. Hopefully we can all continue to do absolutely amazing things, do it together.
Well, that was excellent, Josh. We appreciate you all taking the chance to share with us some of those special words and some of the meaning to you all.
I tell you, my crewmates are just happy that we didn't break out a dry erase board and get into more detail.
We'll chat lensing later.
Absolutely.
A message from
at this time,
astronaut Josh Cassada, the pilot of Crew-5, and his fellow astronauts and cosmonaut, floating in space high above the Earth as they head to the International Space Station with a special message about Albert Einstein, who is represented there floating around space as the zero-G indicator, but then also a nod to his theory of relativity. E equals mc squared, I believe, Bob.
Well, there are a lot of great things that Einstein was responsible for, and I would just say that maybe there are 5 folks experiencing his happiest thought on board the Dragon capsule just right now.
Absolutely, and NASA is looking to return humans to the surface of the moon, and this is part of it, going to the International Space Station. We mentioned some of the efforts in going up there, and of course the science that's going to be done by Crew-5. We're looking forward to that as well. Some final thoughts, Bob, about the day today.
Well, it was just a wonderful day, a chance for me to relive the launch experience with the Falcon 9 and the Dragon capsule, and I'm just super excited for the Crew-5 and little Einstein on board and in free fall right now.
A very special moment indeed. Before we wrap up, I want to send it over to Megan Cruz, who is with Deputy Administrator and former Space Shuttle astronaut Pam Melroy.
I am Pam, and I have just been chatting about how wonderful of a day this was for a launch.
Oh, it's a gorgeous day here at the historic Kennedy Space Center. For me to see the next generation of launch vehicles launching to the space station was thrilling.
And also the next generation of young explorers. You know, you and I were talking about a young boy here, guys, that bought a space suit, an astronaut suit from downstairs at our store and was wearing it around and running around. How cute was that to see him so excited?
Well, I found it pretty cute to see the 3 rookies who were on the flight, as well as my very dear personal friend, Koichi Wakata, who I flew with in 2000 to the space station. So I'm inspired by both the young and the experienced.
And speak to me about that like you said, you've flown on the space shuttle 3 times. Talk to me about that ascent, how it must feel as they're going up through the atmosphere.
It's absolutely a remarkable experience, and I found myself thinking as I was looking at the schedule for this rocket, how physics drives so much of what we do. So it's very similar in the timing of everything, but the space shuttle was a little bit of a wild ride, I have to say. It had a lot of vibration, particularly the first 2 minutes. But you know, it's a very different experience when you're here on the ground. It always brings tears to my eyes. I pray for the crew. When you're inside the vehicle, you're having a blast.
So I'm glad to hear that they were having a blast. Talk to me about why these commercial crew missions are so important.
Well, they're really important to us for a lot of different reasons. The whole value that NASA brings to the American people and in fact to humanity is around science, a strong science and technology posture for the country, and inspiration. And we see that all wrapped up in Commercial Crew because we see the ability to do more science on orbit because we can carry more crew members. We see the advancements that have been made through NASA investments in commercial crew and commercial cargo that are lifting our entire space industry. And of course, there's nothing better than seeing an astronaut fly to space for inspiration.
Sure. And what's next for NASA? You know, right behind us, we have the vehicle assembly building. Inside is NASA's Artemis 1 rocket. Are you excited for that?
Oh, I'm very excited. I'll tell you, it's a big deal when a new rocket flies for the first time. And we have learned a lot. We have a lot to learn, just like I was a test pilot. So when we flew airplanes, we never actually launched the first try. Usually we just taxied down the runway. So we've taken her out to the runway a couple of times now, and we've learned a lot. And I cannot wait to see the most powerful rocket in the world launch going to the moon.
Yeah, we're doing a lot of great stuff here, and we're so happy to bring viewers on the ride with us, right?
You bet. That's the whole idea. NASA shares and inspires.
Perfect. Pam, thank you so much. I appreciate you being here. Guys, we're going to send it back to you for the last time today.
Thank you very much, Megan. Great job out there. Appreciate it. And Nicole, Josh, and Koichi and Anna are now on course to arrive at the International Space Station around 4:57 p.m. Eastern Time tomorrow. And of course, NASA TV will stay on the air for continuous live coverage along Crew-5's entire ride to station. Meanwhile, SpaceX's YouTube channel will join live coverage starting at roughly 2 hours prior to docking. And though our coverage here at Kennedy is coming to a close, we will turn it over to the team in Houston to take us through the next phases of the Crew-5 mission all the way through the arrival at the International Space Station. For those of you watching online on NASA's YouTube, make sure you take a look at the description below. You'll see the video link there, and you'll find that for Crew-5 Coast Phase. Live coverage will continue at that link shortly. You can see it at the bottom of your screen. Pull that up for you. If you're watching on NASA TV, you won't notice a thing, and coverage will continue. So a post-launch news conference is scheduled for 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time on NASA TV, and you can find mission updates on Twitter at NASA, at SpaceX, and on the web at nasa.gov, including timing on any potential live tours of Dragon Endurance during the trip to station. Now, before we sign off from Kennedy, I want to thank my partner and co-host, Bob Benkin, for being on the launch broadcast, sharing your incredible insight and experiences. Bob, I really enjoyed listening to you today. Thank you so much. To you and to Megan, your wife, who helped us with Crew-4. We look forward to hearing more from your family, as well as maybe seeing Theo on a future launch broadcast.
Well, thank you, Daryl. I very much appreciate that. And of course, thank you to my wife and my son and our dog Shadow for joining us for a short period of time during today's broadcast. And again, I just want to echo Deputy Administrator Pam Mulroy's words with it's been an exciting year. The Crew-5 folks are just getting started on their excitement for the year, if you will, on their way to the space station right now. But we've got an Artemis 1 rocket over there, the SLS, in the vehicle assembly building. Looking forward to seeing that back out on the pad and getting her launched later this year.
Coming to a launch pad soon, mid-November, we all hope, and we're looking forward to that as well immensely. Huge thanks to all of our guests for joining us today, and thank you to all of you for watching. Here now are the highlights from the journey we took today, and just a reminder from here at the Kennedy Space Center to keep looking up. They're getting suited up inside that historic suit-up room, everything going smoothly. And there they are, the astronauts of Crew-5 taking their first steps outside.
9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition, engines full power, and liftoff. Go Crew-5.
vehicle is pitching downrange. Stage 1 propulsion.
I feel the liftoff. The clock has started. Roger, 0G. I feel fine. Godspeed, John Glenn.
Houston, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed. Roger, Tranquility. We copy you on the ground.
New possibilities are opening up for scientific cooperation between countries.
2, 1, 0. Liftoff. Americans return to space as Discovery clears the tower. Discovery, go and throttle up.
Discovery, Roger. Go for deploy.
Thanks, Aaron, and to everybody in the shuttle program. The crew is go for launch.
Roger. Nice to be in orbit.
We have followed in their footsteps to get us where we are today.
Welcome to Mission Control Houston. I'm NASA Shaniqua Vereen, and we are live in the International Space Station Flight Control Room. Just about 50 minutes ago, we had a successful launch of NASA's SpaceX Crew-5 mission to the International Space Station from the Kennedy Space Center at Launch Complex 39A in Cape Canaveral, Florida. Crew-5 will have about a 29-hour flight to the space station. Crew-5 lead flight director Greg Whitney, who led integrated NASA and SpaceX operations teams and planning for this mission, is currently leading teams here in Mission Control and will be back later tomorrow for Dragon's approach and docking. Crew-5 astronauts consist of NASA astronaut and Dragon commander Nicole Mann, NASA astronaut and Dragon pilot Josh Cassada, mission specialist JAXA astronaut Koichi Wakata, and Russian cosmonaut Anna Kikina. Expedition 68 is currently aboard the International Space Station, including the Crew-4 astronauts, NASA's Kjell Lindgren, Bob Hines, Jessica Watkins, and the current station commander and European Space Agency astronaut Samantha Cristoforetti. They arrived back in April of 2022 and are set to come home next week. Also aboard the station is NASA astronaut Frank Rubio and Roscosmos cosmonauts Sergei Prokopyev and Dmitry Patelin of Roscosmos, who recently arrived to the space station aboard a Soyuz spacecraft. With the addition of Crew-5, we'll have 11 people aboard the station for a short period of time. Currently attached are 4 spacecrafts, including the SpaceX Crew Dragon Freedom, which brought up the Crew-4 astronauts, a Russian Soyuz MS-22 cruise ship, and Progress 80 and 81 resupply ships. Crew-5 is not the only thing headed to station. That's right, we have critical science and investigations headed up with the crew. Here are some details on the science the crew will work on their mission. Astronauts experience changes in their cardiovascular, respiratory, and musculoskeletal systems during spaceflight. These changes could pose a challenge on future long-duration missions, particularly those where crews encounter different levels of gravity and have minimal direct medical support. CardioBreath, a Canadian Space Agency investigation flying with the crew, examines deconditioning of the cardiorespiratory system and how it affects the control of blood pressure. Crew members will wear a custom-fitted biomonitor shirt that tracks heart rate, blood pressure, breathing rate, and activity level before, during, and after exercise. Results are then compared to measurements taken before and after the astronauts' missions. These findings could provide insight into how blood pressure control adapts and help researchers develop ways to keep astronauts healthier in space.
Dragon, burn complete, nominal burn. Next burn is the phase burn per your displays in approximately 20 hours.
Copies, we see that burn coming up in 20 hours.
Try to contain your excitement just for a little while longer. And when able, we do have some words for Josh to plan or to talk through some of the actions we wanted to take on his suit. So no hurry on that one, but just when ready, report when you're ready to copy.
Good, Mike. We're ready to copy.
Okay, Josh, I've got 4 items here that we're looking for your eyes on. So I'll kind of go through the first 2 first, and then the second 2, because the first 2 are a little bit connected, and then the last 2 will be pretty straightforward. But first item that I have is that what we'd like you to do is remove the middle seat foam of your seat, and then verify that the seat side umbilical connection is secure by pressing firmly downwards directly above both latches. That's one firm push above each latch, and let us know if you hear any clicks or tactile feedback. How copy?
Hey, Mike, I copy that step one is going to be to take out the middle foam of my seat and make sure that that umbilical is securely connected. I'll be doing that by pushing above the latches and see if I can even hear them click into place.
That's correct, and that's going to be, for the above, it's going to be kind of directly into the seat itself. Okay, after that, the second action that we have is that we're requesting that you then lightly pull the umbilical in the opposite direction of which way you'd be pushing in step one. The goal here is to see if pulling away is causing the latches to become loose. How copy?
Okay, copy. After step one, I will pull away from the connection and see if that makes the latches come loose.
Yep, and just for full clarification there, we're looking for just a light pull there, nothing too forceful. Okay, and we just finished up the handover over there, but if you're ready for item number 3, I'm ready to report.
Copy on items 3 and 4.
Okay, item number 3 is to inspect for any FOD around the inflatable visor seal, taking extra care around that polycarbonate portion of the visor.
Dragon copies. Step 3 will be inspecting that inflatable visor seal, and I'll watch out for that polycarbonate.
Good readback, and then the last is to take one inspection of the trapdoor on the suit side QD and just look for any potential FOD on that side of the suit. How copy?
And the copy on step 4, I will go ahead and check the trapdoor on the QD side and just see if there's any FOD in there on my suit.
Good readback.
Dragon copies all 4 of those steps. We'll put those into work. We'll report back in 7 minutes and let you know how they went. And then can we get big picture words on the plan after that? Are we going to be doing another suit leak check here before the end of the workday, which we're happy to do, or do you want to push that off?
Great question. Overall, we are not recommending another leak check at this time. We're just getting a little bit more insight into the current status, knowing that we'll have the leak check for approach is going to be our first time stepping back into any kind of suited activities here. That may change if we discover something on here, but right now we're not planning on having you all re-perform a leak check today.
Copy. We'll knock out these 4, and we're not planning on another leak check actually until we start kicking off the rendezvous, if that's correct.
That's a good readback.
Thanks a lot, Mike. We appreciate it.
If you're just joining us, we're doing live coverage of the NASA SpaceX Crew-5 mission. Their launch to the International Space Station was successful this morning around 11 a.m. CT, 12 noon Eastern Time. Currently on your screen is Hawthorne Mission Control, MCCX on your left, and International Space Station Flight Control Room here at Mission Control Houston on the right, where teams are still in contact with the crew. You just heard the Corps and SpaceX's Mission Control speaking to Josh Cassada as they went over a suit leak check, just checking preemptively because the crew will be off duty and they will not be checking again until suits are put back on upon rendezvous and approach for docking tomorrow. You'll hear calls throughout today's coverage from Dragon to Ground to the crew as they come up from the Corps in MCCX.
And Dragon, no response required. Just a reminder that the off-duty period is starting in approximately 30 minutes. You'll be confirming your sleep schedule with flight surgeons in an upcoming PMC.
And you just heard the Corps to the crew reminding them that they are off duty, and that's 12:30 Central Time, 1:30 Eastern Time. So just about 29 minutes from now, the crew will be off duty, and we may not hear calls any longer to the crew, but we will return and be on duty about 2.5 hours before docking, currently scheduled for 4:57 p.m. Eastern Time tomorrow. Speaking of docking, there's been a lot of preparations that have taken place to prepare the orbiting lab for Crew-5's arrival. In the days leading up to docking, the crew moved stowage around to make sure the docking hatchways were clear and supplies were ready for Crew-5. The afternoon of docking, the station crew will set up laptops that will allow them to monitor Dragon's approach. These tools will be monitored and mirrored down to the ground for flight controllers to see as well. NASA astronaut Kjell Lindgren will be primed for the lead for monitoring Dragon's approach, while he'll be backed by NASA's Bob Hines. Other prep will continue before the crew arrives to the station, which includes cleaning Node 2 or the Harmony module in preparation for Crew-5's arrival, and installing crew alternate sleep accommodations or CASAs to provide additional crew quarters on board. With 11 people and only 7 permanent crew quarters on the International Space Station, some of the crew will also sleep inside their Dragon spacecrafts. One crew member will sleep inside a Freedom while another will sleep inside Endurance once it's docked. with the remaining staking out temporary campout locations, likely in the station's Kibo module or the U.S. airlock. As approach and docking continues, the crew has about a 29-hour approach and rendezvous phase for the crew to arrive at the International Space Station. Flight controllers here on the ground and Mission Control Houston will also begin further preparations. Around 3 hours prior to docking, flight controllers will begin to feather the ISS solar arrays. This is a multi-step process that is spaced out until Dragon is on the docking axis. Both solar alpha rotary joints will be parked and locked. 4 beta gimbal assemblies, or BGAs, will be parked, with 2 of those also being latched. The other 4 BGAs will continue to track the sun, continuing to provide power to the International Space Station. This configuration is designed to protect the arrays from thruster trails or plumes as Dragon approaches. Around 1.5 hours to docking, we will hand over station attitude control from U.S. gyroscopes to Russian thrusters. This is so station can hold finer attitude control while Dragon approaches. Once soft dock is complete, the docking ring retraction complete, we will hand over attitude control back to the U.S. gyroscopes so that thrusters are not firing.
SpaceX for PMC.
Go ahead. SpaceX Dragon, we would like to get out the suit now, so for PMC, could you wait for 10 minutes?
Not a problem. We have a lot of window for the PMC. Just let us know when you'd like to take it.
Okay, yeah, we'll get back with you. Thank you.
And that was a call from the Corps to the crew. Koichi Wakata responded. The SpaceX Dragon crew would like to doff their suits before having a PMC or a private medical conference. This is standard procedure for any approach and docking in a spacecraft, and the crew is doing fine. They will let the Corps know when they are ready for those PMCs. If you're just joining us, you're watching live coverage of NASA's SpaceX Crew-5 mission to the International Space Station. The SpaceX Dragon spacecraft carrying NASA astronauts Nicole Mann, Dragon Commander Josh Cassada, Dragon pilot and mission specialist JAXA astronaut Koichi Wakata, and Roscosmos cosmonaut Anna Kikina are on their way to the International Space Station, and they have successfully reached orbit. They're in for about a 29-hour rendezvous until they approach and dock to the International Space Station. We're expecting docking to commence around 4:57 p.m. Eastern Time tomorrow. So far as the crew has reached orbit, they have had a successful nose cone deploy, a successful 11-minute phase burn, and are looking for the next burn to be 20 hours from now, and that's a phase adjust burn. Again, that will happen a couple hours before approach and docking to the International Space Station. You won't see any cabin views for now. You currently have views of MCCX, that's the SpaceX Mission Control Room in Hawthorne, California on the left, and you see the International Space Station Flight Control Room or Mission Control Houston on your right. The crews are currently doffing their spacesuits or taking off their spacesuits, and they will then have a private medical conference with flight surgeons here on the ground. The crew will go into an off-duty status around 12:30 Central Time, 1:30 Eastern Time, which means we won't hear or see them until we're in a closer approach and docking maneuver.